morning. We did audio check just a few minutes ago and got feedback that everyone can hear us. So feel free to drop a note in the chat box or in the Q&A if you definitely can hear us. So thank you for joining today's webinar, Reactive Strategies Review Process. Or, I think I said that. Yeah, Reactive Strategy Review Process. And I'm Heike Johns, Learning and Development Coordinator for the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Participants are muted upon entry. However, I do suggest that you mute your line as well. Can't explain why, but every once in a while we do get a little kickback or feedback that comes through. Thank you to whoever responded that you can hear us. You should see today's presentation on your screen. Just a reminder, you can use those arrows in the top right corner to manipulate the size of the presentation on your screen. If you have questions about content today, we suggest that you put those in the Q&A box. If you have questions, comments, something regarding sound or technical pieces, use the chat box for those. Once this work is completed, we will be sending out another email blast that includes not only the presentation, but will also include some participant data. Any additional Q&A pieces that may be helpful, we'll send that out via email blast. For anyone that's not signed up to receive division emails, you can do on the DD homepage. Over on the right side of the screen, kind of toward the bottom, you'll see a yellow rectangle that you can click on to sign up for those email blasts. So at the end of the webinar, there will be a survey that populates in your window. I know those take an extra couple, 2 or 3 minutes sometimes, but we do ask that you go ahead and fill that out so that we can get some good feedback, and that helps to guide us on what next steps are. I believe all that I have for the moment. So without any further ado, over to Rita Cooper. Western area behavior.
Again, as Heike said, if we have any sound issues, please let us know. Thank you, and hopefully this will be of benefit to you as we progress through. So, strategies, we'll get to that, but it ties back to the division directive, DD 4.300, home and community-based waiver, EMS, ensuring that limitations and restrictions justified. And also remember that this also gets back to those concepts of prohibited practices, which define the 3 interventions, 2 interventions of physical and chemical environments, and if they're used, when, why, and how. So we have all that in there. It also, of course, defines the responsibilities of all parties. The regional office provides support coordinators, regional behavior support review committee, all are creating systems for us. The processes is how we work. Requirements of DD 4.300, and we have a nice visual here that helps us understand the when we do what. When there is a reactive strategy or a history of need, and we'll get to defining what a reactive strategy is. We create a safety plan. If, after we've created that safety plan, there is a point in time that the reactive strategy threshold is reached. Then the planning team, of course, needs to convene and review that plan. So, why take a look at that reactive strategy plan? Any responses in the chat box or Q&A? Excellent, excellent. You know, it takes a look at, you know, what's not effective. Behavior has changed. There's been some other challenges, either environmentally or with staff. So that's a really important part of the whole process, is to, if it's not working, you need to reconvene. Reactive strategy threshold is reached for 2 consecutive quarters, then the goal is to refer it to the Regional Behavior Support Review Committee for consultation. And the idea behind that is sometimes, you know, teams get lost in the forest, and the team may need some fresh eyes to kind of review that safety crisis plan, the other elements. So it's always good to have a set of fresh eyes, and you know, we'll have another training on reminding you what the goal and operation of the Regional Behavior Support Review Committee is. If there are reactive strategy threshold is reached in 3 or more quarters or over a 2-year period, you can, or the team is required to consider behavior services. Please consider behavior services even much earlier. It's not a requirement that you have to wait. The idea is, if there is a need, request the services. I realize some of you may respond, well, there aren't enough behavior analysts, or we don't have behavior analysts in our area. Well, it's important to at least request those in some way, so we're getting a better definition of what our needs are and where our needs are. So that's a requirement at this point in time. So that is the reactive strategy, or history. Reactive strategy. Well, it's something that you use immediately or it's short term. It's necessary to address those dangerous behaviors, harm to self, harm to others. It's used as a first response in an emergency situation. Procedures that would be included as a reactive strategy would be things like blocking, physical restraint, a delayed response in which somebody restricts something, or there might be increased levels of supervision. I'm going to throw another question out to the group out there, and you can respond, of course, in the chat box or Q&A. So what other procedures might you define reactive strategy? Excellent. I saw somebody responded PRN. That is exactly right. Use of law enforcement. Excellent. What else? I'll let you know. It would be, if somebody put in there, that's that physical intervention. It would also be if somebody's taken to the hospital. You guys are really getting this. You have an idea of what a reactive strategy is. Well, once you figure out that you have some issues, then write a safety crisis plan. So the plan, of course, is an individualized plan. So strategies that would safely address the dangerous behavior at the time of occurrence. Really, the critical element of that safety crisis plan is the prevention. So we don't get to that point of imminent harm. Real goal is, of course, to prevent the crisis and respond appropriately so it doesn't happen again. The idea is, how did we get here? How do we not get here again? So look at the concept of reactive strategy review process. And the goal is to develop a system for changing based on a critical analysis of the events. So let's delve into that a little more. In the medicine field, we take a look at curing symptoms and you know, addressing those things. So a broken wrist, you put a splint on it. The question is, how did we get a broken wrist? Well, there's a number of different ways that might happen. I almost broke my wrist when I fell my bicycle. Kids get broken bones at any time for sports or falling off of something. So, you know, when we get into the reactive strategy process, what we're really looking for is not how we fixed it, but we prevent it the next time. We take a deeper approach to look at analysis and identify what the underlying systems and processes are that really, really need to change. It looks at how systems and are interrelated. So we look at what's the cause and what's the effect. We get fatigue, something that may strike a chord with you, an ABC analysis. There was a behavior, there was a consequence. But really, we look at the other side of that behavior, all of the antecedents that resulted in that behavior. Usually look at some basic things like the causes, what things were there in the environment that have led to it. One of the things that people may be bothered by is temperature or noise. So we look at that physical environment. We also would look at the human causes. New staff, was there other things with that person? Or is the person sick? So look at all of those elements. And last is organizational cause. And that's really the basis of the whole review process is, do we have or do we lack a process to take a look at these? And that, of course, looks at all three of these and determines what's the actual cause. General elements of the reactive strategy review now. Looks like, as I've been talking, we have a couple questions. One is, are there any templates or examples of good crisis strategy plans or safety crisis plans to use for guidance? We do have the blank template, and one of the things that all of the area regional behavior analysts do is extend themselves to help teams write those safety crisis plans originally. So we are developing some really good examples. I know I've developed some with teams and would be more than happy to redact those and make those available. Of course, the idea is it needs to be personalized. Next question, is the safety crisis plan part of the universal strategies plan or different from that? A universal strategies plan may not have all of the elements that a safety crisis plan would. So I would really take a look at what a safety crisis plan needs and the elements the universal strategies plan has. It could be different. They could be integrated. Everyone, for those questions, please keep them coming. The reactive strategy review is, of course, structured to facilitate a team process to identify the root cause and then develop corrective for those undesirable outcomes, however they came through, whether it was physical causes, human causes, or organizational issues. Process provides you as the team a way to break down and identify what in the system did break down and how to change those to prevent future events. what happened, why it happened, determine changes. Again, I can't stress enough that it's a team process. And please don't get this next bullet confused. It's a performance improvement plan that helps the team identify for that individual in that situation, in that residential setting, in the home setting, in the day program setting, what is working and what needs to be changed. And it's, of course, all about change, and not just change for the sake of change, change for the better. If we look at some examples beyond our environment or our industry, I bring up perhaps the industry and manufacturing. I'm sure we've all had or heard of those recalls in the auto industry. Well, those recalls happen because of a variety of reasons. And again, it ties back to those physical cause, human cause, or organizational cause. What's the follow-up? So hopefully, the industry will take a look at their systems and processes and realize that something has to change. And hopefully that defect doesn't happen again. I worked on various sides of various organizations, and I was told, when you go buy a new car, always ask, what was it made on? Because if you get a car manufactured on Monday, Friday, it's less than if you got on Wednesday. So it's kind of interesting. We relate it to how we operate too. So who should be involved in this review? That's a function of who the team is, but it should be anyone who was personally involved in the event, and I narrow that. So if we had law enforcement called, then that's the event. Or if someone fell and broke their, again, I'll tie it back to that. That's the event. So with all the parties present, what we get speculation. I remember in organizations, we'd all sit around and say, okay, so what are we going to do without including the parties? And that's really an important part, because what we get is speculation or fictionalized attributes that's to perhaps effective conclusions. We need to be aware of asking for this level of involvement may cause some, we've never asked for it before, some sense of hostility, defensiveness. If something happened, we're all of a sudden asking direct care staff to be a part of the process, and we've never done that before. It's almost like the Spanish Inquisition. So when we're creating these systems, we also need to create buy-in from the system. Managers should explain what's the purpose of the analysis, why we're doing it, so people don't feel threatened. We also need to stress that it's not to assign blame. And over time, hopefully, as you create these systems, sustain the systems, there'll be a comfort level. And it's like, oh, yeah, we just need to figure out how we got there and how we don't get there again. So it's maybe an active process, but it's always a good process. Again, don't assign blame. So have a review. Well, it should be, ideally, every time a reactive strategy is used. So think about what your organization is doing. Potentially, if you're on the other side, what are you seeing in organizations? When do they review something? Our system is DMH to review something. And it should be as after the event as can be scheduled or developed and convened, because sometimes it just doesn't work. Timing, though, is everything, and we'll get to that whole process of why timing is important. So should the event review occur? Well, it's probably not a good idea to at the house, if that's where it occurred, you need some neutral territory, a safe environment. So, you know, it might be at the office, it might be everyone is comfortable and neutral territory. If you're including in the team your support coordinator, which would be a great idea, it might be good to have it at the support coordinator's office, because that's neutral. So what suggestive steps to review? Of course, identify the event, preliminary information, and that might come from a bunch of different sources. It might come from the EMT, it might come from anecdotal notes. Also, events might come from management referrals. It might come from the QRN, from the regional office. It might come from a family, or it might even come from the VN. So those are really events to help us take a look at to change how we're doing things. Organizations should also have a process of selecting events, because if we do every event in the beginning, that becomes really overwhelming. There might be some other things that an organization could take a look at to define as an event. So if you could put it in the chat box or question and answer, we'll give everyone an opportunity to respond. I saw that question. Does the consumer need to participate? Well, I think that would be appropriate, that they can respond or be a part of the process. It also gives us great information. Question about reactive strategies and restrictive interventions. I don't have enough time to sort of address that, so we'll put that in our responses back, because that's a longer response than just a short-term one here. That is definitely another source. Another source might be workmen's compensation claims. For the organization, you know, it also should be horizontal and vertical integration of who's ever involved in the process. So I really appreciate that there's a need for the individual to be part of the process. There's another question: should the children's division involvement? You know, if children's division is part of the team, definitely, as much as they can participate. Again, what's the next step? Well, you've got to develop a team. Of course, it would be those individuals who are involved in the event, but also be other people, facilitators, and the facilitator could be potentially the support coordinator. And the team also would be any individual who is knowledgeable about the event or the process in the system. And throwing this out again to those participating, who might be a facilitator in the process. Response there: counselors, community mental health providers, could pastor. You know, depending on the team, it might be the individual themselves, or might be somebody else involved in the process. Excellent responses. When we look at, you know, applying this on a more personal level, think of who is the team if there is a car accident. Well, it could be both parties. If vehicles hit, I know there might be law enforcement involvement. In the long term, it would be insurance agents. So when you're looking at who is the team, tie it back to something personal that you can relate to, so you know how to develop the team. was mentioned here, ask the person supported who they want to facilitate the meeting. Excellent, excellent suggestion. Elements and everything coming in. Appreciate the active involvement in the process since we're not actually seeing each other face to face, but I definitely appreciate all the chats and questions and answers. So next is the description of what happened. That recognize the facts surrounding the event to understand what happened. So I'm going to throw out to all you participants out there. We've got 51 of you. From. I support members, excellent. People involved, in reports, right. Any present at the time, excellent, excellent. So we've got maybe the event report, we maybe have anecdotal, behavior logs and progress notes. That's excellent, excellent. The other thing we need to take a look at when we're collecting that information and reviewing it is, I don't know how many of you, I'm dating myself, but drag, and I forget which one of the guys said, just ma'am, just the facts. So we're looking for those concrete, tangible things. I know it's sometimes hard when we look at behavior logs and progress notes. It really helps us to find for our staff to remove themselves, to put us the facts. So it would be identifying contributing factors. These are situations, circumstances, or conditions that increase the likelihood of the event happening. Have well, others, but mine is up in age there and is late 80s. And one of the challenges for him at times, we look at environmental conditions or circumstances, was having loose rugs in the house that he would trip over. So we look at what conditions might have presented themselves. So I'm going to refer back to the auto accident event. And so let's throw those things out there. If there's an auto accident, what circumstances or conditions might increase the likelihood that we have an auto accident? I'm going to set out to all of you participants. Response was weather, excellent. Last week, being in, oh, texting, yeah, well, that's, you might get a ticket if you text. Excellent. Super. Well, you guys have the idea what those, being distracted, what those conditions and circumstances might be given our accident example. One of the things I also thought of, drug impaired, alcohol or drugs, and so vehicle maintenance. Those things will definitely be contributing circumstances. Let's take it to our environment. The circumstances or conditions or situations might contribute to an event in a residential setting, a day program, the community, or the home for the individuals we support. Excellent. Mismedication, sensory overload, excellent. What, you know, when we look at staffing, whether it's insufficient or new staff illness of the individual and the staff. There's boredom, restrict access to preferred activities or possessions. Yeah, you take my granola bar and do a snatch and grab, I'm probably not going to be a happy camper. Not paying close attention, a change in schedule. Yeah, even a change in schedule where the person isn't notified. My husband didn't check his calendar this morning, and he called me and said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you I have a doctor's appointment." Regulation, excellent. Change in routine, that ties back to the change in schedule. Housemates, we're new. One of the challenges I think we have in our industry is the fact that we have individuals who are maybe necessarily the most compatible. We need to look at that in how we do things. Chaotic, loud environment, not follow the person's schedule. Savings time, yes. Hunger. I remind people that the things that will elicit some less than positive responses from me are halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Somebody back there. Excellent. Getting this as to what are some of the contributing factors. So you guys are really on the ball with what in fact might be contributing factors in our system. So when we identify the cause, remember there's a difference between the contributing factors and the cause. And what we need to do is do a thorough analysis of those contributing factors and really identify the underlying system. So I'm going to go back to some of the things that were presented and give you some idea of how we progress. So if lonely, that's the contributing factor. What is the underlying reason they're lonely? Do they have friends? Why is it they don't have friends? So you keep going back and forward. How do we design and implement changes to eliminate those root causes? And the goal is ultimately to, for a team to determine how best to change processes and systems to reduce the likelihood of another event. So, what might be some things that the team might ultimately determine with root cause, or what might they take a look at to make sure we don't get there again for this event that elicited a crisis, self or others? I'll give you a few moments to respond in the Q&A or chat box. Ratios, okay, medications. Looking at even further, so what about the medications? Go back and take a look at the psychiatrist. Go back and take a look at what are we communicating about the medications to the person prescribing. But you guys are getting the idea of, it's those things, it's another step back maybe. Oh, one of the things we look at is a way to handle those daily routines. So if staff need to have a better way to handle those daily routines, who do you get that from? They learn that. Okay, I'll respond. It's to develop skills. Maybe we need some additional training for staff. Unaddressed medical issues, staff overlooked, signs of a UTI, excellent. May not be well trained. So again, it ties back to developing skills. We look at our car issue. It might be tying back to some better skills in being able to navigate snow. I'm from the East Coast, and snow is not uncommon there in the winter. But when I moved up here, I was amazed at the fact that I say people in the greater Missouri area are not as adept with snow as we find on the East Coast. If we are on the other side, you know, looking at an impaired driver, one of the things that could change that is taking a cab or a taxi or having a designated driver. Or looking at the ultimate cause is that there was a maintenance issue. Stick to that standard scheduled maintenance for your vehicle. Any questions or comments before we kind of, well, I'll wait for that. We'll get to the next slide, and then we'll give an opportunity to have some quick questions and answers. So the next step is, you know, we've figured out what we need to put in place, and we need to take a look at, did what we put in place evidence a change in how things are happening? The ultimate measure is that it doesn't happen again. I'll throw out another example again. The idea with the car accident is if you put all those things in place that cause the accident, you wouldn't have an accident, the same type of accident again. I'll use another example from our side of the industry, the person service industry. And if we're looking at teach skills, skills I used to teach, one of the skills we addressed with the students in my special education classes were learn to cross the street effectively. And, you know, if you take a look at learning to cross the street effectively, you know, that's not a skill that you can do with 80% effectiveness, because at some point in time, if you're only teaching the person to cross the street effectively 80% of the time, there is that opportunity. Please, I don't know this, but crossing the street needs to be done effectively 100% of the time. So when we're teaching those skills, we have to be very diligent and look at how we change that system over time. So move on to some specific tools. Those are just some general steps or suggested steps as to take a look at the process. And for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to take a look at some specific tools. As you can see, there are numerous tools or methods to take a look at trying to figure out what is the end reason that happened. And we don't have time today to address all of those, but we'll address a couple that we'll take a look at in more detail. But I want to give the participants an opportunity to pose some questions, to throw out some issues with anything that's been presented. I'll give you 2 minutes to be able to do that. Was the question, can these strategies also be used with natural home folks? Definitely. The challenge sometimes is that we have women and people getting services, residential services, we have a little better oversight. But these techniques are definitely can be implemented in the natural home. So the question is, sometimes staff are initiating the response by being coercive and taking away things or privileges from the client. I definitely, concur that sometimes we have, and so I'll throw it out to those who are participating. So if staff are being coercive or taking things away or removing privileges, what participants think we need to do? I see some response there. Ensuring staff have done positive behavior supports, initiating tools of choice training. The root of or the basis of what we do organizationally in residential services and natural homes is that if we remember that tiered support pyramid, or any implementation process, if we have good systems at the base of our pyramid, that's good set expectations, good understanding of what the policy and procedures are of the organization. In a home environment, it's, parents setting clear and consistent expectations. Do we have consistency across, or is the child playing one parent against the other? If we have that base solid and it's not Swiss cheese, then generally speaking, 80% of the issues can be resolved there. The next level would be addressed by some adaptations. And if we get to the top of the pyramid, that's when we've got to that critical point where it is really imminent harm or imminent danger. I love that people have addressed natural home environment. One of the things we need to take a look at, because it's different than our residential settings or in our day program settings, is what the parents' tolerance levels of, what is a critical event? Because it may be something other than what we think. So be very mindful of that in the process. I also like that we've got better train the staff on how to handle situations of power struggles, definitely. And when you're doing that, what you need to do is, so I love that we have that. So what does it mean, better trained staff? So down a little further, and better training might be to take a look at, well, we do that training. One of the things that's a challenge today is I'm talking head. And, best practice would let us know that the talking head is not always the opportune, but that we should have other things in the step. And so consider today in behavior analysis, we have behavior skills training is what we consider, and what everyone should consider is we instruct, and that's what I'm doing today. Then we model, and have examples, we let people practice, and we allow feedback. So that 4-step process: instruct, practice, give feedback. There's comments, how do we know they learned the skill and apply the skill correctly? Again, we know that by doing, and I'll use a behavior term here, it's not related to anything but fidelity. Are they doing what they need to do? We need to do it. Okay, and how you see these being implemented in an SDS setting. I would relate it back again to very much like a home setting. Do we have the right things in place? And of course, in each situation, the team that you're going to draw together would include everyone that is part of that event or that thing that happened. And these apply not only to behavior situations, but also to other situations, as I mentioned with my dad and him. You know, one things we learned when he came over was pull all those throw so that he doesn't trip and fall. Let me take some of the other comments here. Power struggle training. You know, I tie to that. Role-playing with staff is really a critical element most of the time when we're looking at how to not be coercive, is a coercive, and those things were mentioned before. To process, ensure asking, we're prompting and encourage individuals, not ending and telling them. There are excellent ways, again, to ensure that that's done. And the next part is follow up in the home by observation. You know, it says observation by management. But how about their staff themselves, having direct care staff kind of be that coach in the process, which is really, you know, you take it down the next level. It shouldn't always have to be management. You know, how does the person self-regulate? How does this person, the direct care staff, self-assess? Comments, I greatly appreciate all the feedback. And, of course, after we're done, if I've missed anything, we'll go through these comments and that you've added in the questions and fill in the blanks if I've missed something. I don't see anything else at this point in time. There was a comment, due process training. That might be one element. To get to that training process, again, it's that fidelity. How do we know that staff or the system in the residential setting, in the day program setting, are actually implementing those things with the best level of implementation fidelity that they can. So we're going to now to some specific tools that we use. Again, I'm not going to address all of these. There are a lot. There are many things out there, too, that you can take a look at. The other thing I'm not telling organizations to do is you have to use these. What I'm trying to do is giving you some examples of tools that might make the whole process more successful. So what we're going to get is the 5 whys, and that's kind of an interesting review because, you know, if any of you have had children when they're around 2 or 3, the big question that they have is, well, why? And then you give an example and they say, well, why? And then you say something else and it's this why after why after why. As an organization, that's truly what this tool looks like. Why happened, what happened. Then is that. You know, if we look at, well, staff were, the staff did a double. Okay, so why did the staff do a double? Because you don't have sufficient staff. So that you don't have sufficient staff. Well, because I can't get good staff and I can't retain good staff. Well, what is that? So, very contrived example. I've drilled down to the why, and why, and that's what this review tool really is. So, the questioning process continues until a cause is found. It is meant to find the same cause or for maybe 2 or more contributing factors. So let's take a look at this a little closer. Process. So So, when we're looking at this, the team must determine if they've truly identified the why. If we take a look at another car example, because everyone can relate to a car, it might be, the car stopped, and some of you may have teens, and all of a sudden they, they call on their cell phone, and I ran out of gas. Okay, well, why run out of gas? Because I forgot to get gas when I was going where I needed to. Well, okay, so once you get gas, other than that, well, another maybe because I forgot my ATM card, or I forgot my debit card, or I didn't have any money. So why didn't you have any money, or why didn't you have? So we're always drilling down in the process. The team determines if they've truly identified the cause or a contributing factor. And that's really hard. Asking the question about each potential cause identifies the team. If we get to the point where the answer is no, then the team has identified the root cause. Looks like we have some questions going on here a little bit. Just to take a look at this. So we were just kind of scrolling through the Q&A in the chat box, and we didn't have any real questions at this point in time. But hold on, I'm going to follow you through one of our examples. We've got, and I'll give you a situation. We've got Jill is an individual, and she uses a walker for better mobility in the house, and Jane glasses. Jane has some housemates, and so Jane walking from the living room to the kitchen, and Jane trips and falls. And I'm going to tie it back to an easy example here. And so one of the drill downs would be, so why did, and we'd look at getting the team together, of course, so why did she trip and fall? Well, it could be a couple of reasons. There is old carpet in the living room, and the carpet is bubbled, and that's what she fell over. So bubble in the carpet. Well, it's in a carpet because it wasn't installed appropriately. Okay, so that pulls it down even more. And when we get to that point, so what are some solutions if she's falling on this bubbled carpet? And I'll throw it up to the team. If our individual that we support is aging, wears glasses, uses a walker, and she fell from getting from the living room to the kitchen because of the bubbled carpet, because it was inappropriately installed, might there be other reason why she tore the carpet, or what other things might be some other conditions which would have led her to trip over the bubble in the carpet? She's done that before, so let's take a minute and think. You've got somebody else in your office, or you're doing this as a multiple participant, and everyone's kind of around the table. Take a minute to think. Take a minute to share among each other, and then post questions or results as to why might there be this situation. And we've down and drilled down. What are things that you consider that have resulted in our individual falling? And, you know, with contrived situations, we can bring up all sorts of things. Well, you know, again, I believe I mentioned she wears glasses and she didn't have her glasses on. Or perhaps she isn't lifting her feet as well as she did before. Why would that be happening? Could be a medical issue associated with that. So there's a medical, was using her walker? Excellent, excellent. Was she wearing her glasses? Do not monitor high traffic areas to ensure they're free of clutter. We've got some great comments coming in. Greatly appreciate that. You really are getting the conceptual framework of this why tool to review things. You know, hope those of you who are participating, whether you're on the regional office side or you're a support coordinator or you're a provider, either residential or some other program provider or day program, you can really take a look at this when you have situations in your organization to understand, do you really have a system that will address why things happen? And even take it beyond the individuals you support to your organization. Why do people miss work? You know, and those might be some things in some of the events. You know, we have a person doing doubles. So really, it's an organizational issue. It's a process issue. It's essentially a policy and procedure. How do we do what we do in an organization? So are there things at this point of the why tool? The symptomology of physical disability or even side effects of medication may cause this. That may be an excellent idea. Yeah, you know, again, it's the team, not part of the team. It's a contrived situation, so there are lots of things that could influence this. Okay, we've got, since first going through crisis safety plan training, I have used the 5 Whys tools. It has been very helpful for me in finding solutions. Oh, wow. Thanks for the feedback there. I greatly appreciate it. You know, one of the things that we may do in a future date as a sort of follow-on, you know, for people to use some of these tools is to do a question-answer situation to, you know, help other providers know, you know, how did it work? Did it work? How are you implementing that? Great, appreciate that feedback, and maybe you'll be willing to help us expand this even further. Issues which have not been treated adequately. Again, so those are some ideas, and the next why would be, so why haven't they been? Well, because we haven't taken or followed up, or maybe we're not seeing those little changes over time of the individual's capability, especially as they're aging. You know, there are a couple of things that really influence individuals that age. I know with my dad, you know, my first question to the staff at the VA home is, have you checked for UTI? Because with individuals who are, you know, in those age frames, that a UTI will really send them over the edge. UTIs sometimes mimic a whole lot of other things. So, you know, getting at those medical causes, taking a look at them, that's excellent. Now, if the answer is no, we've actually gotten to the root cause. You know, you keep on asking, again, you guys have done great. Will the event have occurred if this cause had not been present. These are some things under 5 whys that you take a look at as you're doing your why probes. The problem recurs again if the cause is corrected or eliminated. You know, going back to our lady who tripped in the way from the living room to the kitchen. If we are looking at a medical cause and we've got some issues, there might be multiple things we have to address to get to a point where she doesn't fall. So when we're using like the 5 whys, areas we focus our questions on in looking at the why of what happened is, you know, are we communicating effectively? You know, do staff have the right information? Are we training staff? Are we looking at scheduling issues and fatigue issues? Environmental and equipment issues, policies, procedures. Maybe we don't have things in place for reporting back, or barriers in the system. You know, we're a big system. We try to address everyone's needs, but as a system, we don't sometimes get to that point. You know, looking at these, are there a clear chain of command? What do we really need to take a look at? So it's called barrier analysis, and be taking a look at this, and you'll find that many of these tools are very similar. You know, we're trying to take a look at, and they'll tie back to many elements. As an organization, you pick a process, you develop your process. You may pull from the why analysis, you may pull from the barrier analysis. So the first part of the analysis is you take a look at what happened, what caused. And if you recall in the beginning, we looked at 3 areas, human, material, and environment. So those are things, again, why did it happen? Adequate systems, again, leader training, situations, standards and procedures, support individuals. So we need to take a look at all the elements. What to do about it? Again, what is the remediation? What are countermeasures? The other I want to stress here is if you implement something and put something in place, the idea is you want to measure, did it happen again? Did it happen? Want to get back to maybe some more higher level services that are received, and an example of there's a support plan in place. We have a challenge of staff not doing the data collections, and so I'm going to throw out, so staff perspective, why may they not personally complete the data collection? Let's look at material issues or environmental issues. We're just looking at our staff, why might they not be completing the data collection? So it looks like we've had some fully understand what they are to do, lack the time and effort. The first part of the human error is not understanding what they need to do. So the first question is, did they training from the behavior analyst as to how to take the data? The response there ties back to some of the areas. Lack of time, the environmental factor, what might that be? And material factor, what piece of functional issue related to collecting data might there be some challenges with? One of the items mentioned was that we may have one staff and there's 2 individuals being supported, or they have to take data on 2 individuals at the same time. What a challenge for direct care staff. So where do you put document? Oh, I know I need to collect data, but I can't find the form. Back to really an environmental factor, but you guys are spot on with trying to figure out what are the barriers. You know, what's the barrier? One would be that, you know, being a behavior analyst myself, sometimes I forget that, you know, I have to apply the least confusing approach, because you just need to keep it simple. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to collect data, and we don't need a complicated form to collect data. We need to keep it simple so that anyone can do it. So, you know, the material factor is you've got this huge data sheet with all these things you need to have on it, and it just is overwhelming to the staff. So those are barriers. Excellent, excellent responses. Right here. Okay. So, you know, the steps to the barrier analysis is we look at the goal, the behavior, or the target group. Again, you guys walk through these steps really well. You know, what behavior happened? What determined the behavior? How do we analyze it? How do we collect the data? And how do we cycle back through? Again, you know, steps to barrier analysis are very similar to what was the barrier for that? What was the barrier for that? And you might note that what was the barrier very similar to so why. I appreciate that. It's about barrier analysis. In going through what you'll probably find of the 3 that I'm going to take a look at today is that, you know, WISE is probably the simplest. Maybe your organization has, you know, some analysis systems in place. Okay, so the next tool, which is change analysis. You can see the little more complex as we go through it. So let's take a look at what change analysis is all about. A change analysis is really a 6-step process. You know, we take a look at describing the event or the problem, then we describe the situation without a problem. We compare the 2 and document all the differences. So, you know, you take a look at why was a problem today and not a problem yesterday. Like I said, these get more complex as we go on, and I like the simple, so why? And it does help people just to drill it down in the why phase. So the change analysis, you know, initially identifies the cause of the change and will be, you know, back to the passage of time. If we look at our fell on the way from the living room to the kitchen. You know, why were things yesterday? I mean, the carpet was the same yesterday. She had her glasses on. What was the difference? So you're always looking at, you know, she's used that route to get into the kitchen and that bump has been there. What is the difference? This is used in conjunction with other root cause systems too. Again, you'll take a look at a multitude of things, trying to figure out what happened, how did we get there, how do we not get there again. You know, it is a good tool, but it doesn't always provide a clear understanding as to the cause-effect relationship or the given event. And you know, using the change analysis process with the loss. So yesterday she was fine getting from the kitchen to the living room, still has trouble. You know, she's either worn glasses or hasn't, and it hasn't been in effect. So what's the difference? And the difference usually ties back to time. Any changes over time that we see that cause the event. So we're at the end. I know we've scheduled about 3 hours. Of course, this is our first ever into this with just the slides and recording. So, you know, it's a bonus. It's like snow days for teachers. It's like, yes, out early, or for kids on those snow days that they don't have to go. But want to give a couple minutes before we kind of conclude things. You know, at the end of the presentation here, if we're actually getting where we could review it, we do a practical case analysis and take a look at addressing. You know, hope is that as we proceed through these, the seeds of trends associated with the directive and doing the directive themselves is that you get the instruction, we get to help you practice or model, you bring some things to us and we help you out, and then we give you feedback. So it ties back to best practice as to how we really address training and effectively systems change. So it's here to take a look at any questions, comments, concerns. And we'll have 2 minutes to be able to do that, and it'll give me some time then to review those with the group. And I see we've got just about as many attendees as we had when we started, so I feel that's a winner chicken dinner here. You guys stuck it out. The talking head with pretty slides, so our first foray into this process, I think we're doing pretty good. PowerPoint be available on the web page?
That's a great question. So I'm gonna plug our webinar page. If you go to the DD homepage, on the right side at the bottom of the bulleted list, there is a bullet point for webinars. That is new for our website, so be patient with us as we continue to try to streamline that. There's a section for upcoming webinars, and there's also a place for previous webinars. The recorded version of this, as well as the PowerPoint and any type of technical assistance guidance documents that support that, they will all be posted there. There'll be a blurb, links to get to the documents so that you can print them off. When that's available on our website, we'll notify the audience via email blast so that you know, hey, it's there, ready for us to get to.
Please take the advantage. I believe on the last page you'll see email addresses. The very last page will go ahead and get on the practical application. Here are email addresses, and please, if there are questions as you again, you know, this is a lot of information to digest at one time, and as you're trying to apply these, I think it's really important to, you know, opportunity to say, hey, Rita, if you're from my Western region, I need some help with this, or gosh, could you kind of take a look at what we do and help us refine it? Or if you're from the Central region, my associate Lucas is a great resource in that process. And of course, if you're from the Eastern region, Melantha Witherspoon is your point of contact there, and you have our email addresses. Lucas is not Lucas.EvansA. It should be at, sorry for the glitch. But by now you know what those email addresses look like. And then, of course, Dr. Rogers is also available as our supervisor to address any questions. Would really love any feedback you have to email me or my associates. Again, I'm not telling you as an organization that you have to use any of these. You know, just tying back to the directive, because the directive indicates that as a provider, you should have a system. Take a look at the process as to how active strategies are addressed through the safety crisis plan, and then analyzing those, because at some point in time, if it's not working, you got to figure out why it's not working. We're going to take a couple minutes still to kind of look at any questions, comments, or concerns.
I might also toss out there, as you're working on things, going through this, whatever that might be, have a question, whether it's related to this, something else, and you're not sure who that point of contact is, you can always send those questions to dmail@h.mo.gov. That email address is monitored daily, and those questions, or what information you're needing, can be directed to the appropriate individual. So you might keep that in mind. Lucas is lucas.evans2@dnh.mo.gov.
Thanks so much for that correction. Appreciate it. And we could probably fix that glitch before we post that.
Absolutely.
Two more minutes here. Again, when looking back at some of the comments, somebody indicated they used the 5 whys as an approach that was presented to them at some point in time, and that works very effectively for them. I would encourage you to email us also. What do you do? How do you do to get to that end result, to figure out what the cause was of the event that transpired? It'd be great to do an interview question-answer process with anybody who is interested in participating, to kind of take a look and share best practice in your organization that you can share with other providers in their organizations. For providers, we're looking across both certified and non-certified. These elements, even for a behavior analyst, or behavior writer, is a great way to look at some of the systems that are in place. It's funny, as behavior analysts, we have great things that we can apply to individuals we support and systems, but we don't always apply those to our organization. So that's something that's very interesting in the process. The directive identified the responsible party for each of the steps. The directive doesn't define, in this of if we're looking at doing the root cause analysis, if we're looking at the larger picture you know, defining responsibilities. Individual role is definitely, but not directly related back to reactive strategy review process. Individuals responsible for each of those steps, you know, again, if you take a look, the organization providing support to the individual, anyone related to the event that transpired, and potentially the individual. You know, look at the what we actually is more complex individuals, whether it's a population that is aging, that we have some standard things in general. The individuals we support may have Alzheimer's or dementia. You know, those are other experts that may influence that. We've also got many of our individuals have diagnosed or multiple diagnoses with health issues and substance use issues. Those players really have to be part of the process. You know, as an organization, if you're providing residential services to an individual who has a substance use disorder or has mental health issues, those folks that really need to, those folks really need to be part of the process. Our next question is, should there be a small team within the organization that looks at all EMTs and reactive strategies that take place for further investigation, where it should be done on that situation, and then expand the team as needed? I think this is an excellent approach. Again, I think I mentioned originally that you got to pick and choose your battles, and even when you're making organizational change, you know, the small team looks at the reactive strategies that have been executed in the event reports and says, you know, we're going to address those that tied back to Y and Z or A, B, and C. So I think that's really an organizational development issue, organizational behavior management issue. Whose team, what are they going to do? They're going to define what events and reactive strategies we're going to look at. Because again, to look at every single reactive strategy or everything that goes on within an organization is really a challenge. So I think the organization does have to narrow its scope as, okay, there's the elephant in the room, and you're going to eat it one bite at a time. So we're going to start here, and then we're going to expand upon that. Because if you start at a starting place, getting those things in place that make that problem go away may also other problems go away. I want to thank again the participants. You know, even though it's a new endeavor for us, we've had some great conversations, not necessarily in person, but through chat and Q&A, and you've contributed immensely to the quality of the presentation. So I'm going to take the time to say thank you. We have another comment here. As a TCM, not all providers are really successful using these behavior supports at this time. Our TCM agencies developing their own teams to track the reactive strategies and ways to track the thresholds. You know, that is a very good question. You know, I don't any TCM entities that are doing that, but if as a TCM entity you want to try to support residential providers that you have or the non-certified providers, that would be a great way to kind of get some things in place and share it with the provider support. I would suggest that you don't try to do that all at once. Again, you know, an elephant is hard to swallow all at once, so you're going to take it one bite at a time. You know, how do you help your providers be more successful? Because ultimately, you may see those event reports, or the TCM may be doing service monitoring and seeing some changes. You know, I would be more than happy to help teams create teams that would address these a little more successfully, or when looking at an agency, you look at, you know, one or two sites, and then you expand it beyond that. So there are multiple ways that TCM could help their agencies and individuals to really get this ongoing and very supportive. We're going to probably close things up here, scrolling through the question and answer and chat box for one last time. And I'll do in many sports areas. You got your 2-minute warning. Really actually closed in, but really appreciate all the input and processes. Again, please reach out to us if there are any questions. We have some great things going on that when we close up, there'll be the survey. The survey will help, you know, it's not necessarily grade me. The survey is more to get an idea of who participated, what you consider as, you know, your need. Next step, how could we, as the area behavior analyst and the behavior teams, or help you and whomever else you support be more successful. And it's maybe major questions with sub-questions if you choose to say other and define that. So I would hope, since you got a bonus and you expected this to be about 3 hours, that maybe you'd take that 15 minutes to actually complete that survey to help us figure out what is the next level of what we will provide you. All right, scroll through the chat and the question and answer, and we'll be off at this point in time. Lovely weather today. Out for lunch, it's almost that time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.